Hello, coaches! Welcome back to another episode of Coach Better. Today we're chatting with Lissa, Jeff, Tanya, and Diana from the isedcoach Slow Chat team. We talked about everything from the different types of coaching roles we all have in our schools to the power of social media for professional growth. Learning more about how this team works together to bring you a monthly Slow Chat on Twitter gives us some great insight into the value of connected learning. Hosting the Slow Chat is a testament to the importance of sharing as an opportunity for professional growth. After you listen to this episode, join the isedcoach Slow Chat to learn even more from these superstars.
If you're new here, welcome. My name is Clint Hamada.
And my name is Kim Cafino, and we're your hosts for this series. Between the two of us, we have almost 40 years of coaching experience in schools around the world, and we want to help you coach better.
So whether you're already a coach or you're just getting started, we're passionate about helping you take that next step in your coaching journey by sharing thoughtful, professional conversations about coaching and learning with experts from around the world.
And you might notice that Clint and I are never in the same room. That's because I live in Bangkok and Clint lives in Beijing. But we are so excited to get together every week to share and discuss how we can all coach better together.
If you enjoy any part of this episode, please make sure you give it the old thumbs up. It really does help us to know what you want to hear more about. Also, subscribe to the channel so you can see all of the coaching videos and click on the notifications bell so you know as soon as each video gets posted.
Please make sure to watch all the way to the end. We've got some great opportunities for your professional learning that we think you'll love. Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of Coach Better. Clint and I are here today with many of the members of the #isedcoach team, which is super exciting. So we're going to have a conversation about kind of professional growth as educators, as coaches, and get to know these guys a little bit better. So I will start by asking everyone to please introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about your education background. And I'm just going to randomly call on people as I see them in my window right here. So I'm going to start with Lissa.
My name is Lissa Lehman. I started as a French teacher. I was an instructional coach in Kuwait the last 6 years. I am now working with Eduro, actually, which is super exciting. And then I just moved to Beijing in July, and I just started as an EAL teacher in the high school.
Awesome. Thank you. And Jeff.
Hi, my name's Jeff Derry. I'm from Australia, obviously, and it's obviously Movember, as you can see. This goes in a couple of days. So I started as an elementary teacher, teaching in elementary school. Then I was a principal and a deputy principal in schools in Australia. And about 9 years ago, we moved overseas, where I was a technology coach in China for 4 years. And now I'm in Kuala Lumpur, and I've been a technology coach and head of IT at a small international school there for the last 5 years. That's about it.
Awesome. Thank you. And Tanya.
Hi there, my name's Tanya LeClaire, and I am currently at the American International School of Guangzhou, but originally from Canada. I'm the Innovation and Technology Coach for the elementary school there, and before that, I was an elementary school teacher.
Thank you. And last but not least, Diana.
Hi, I'm Diana Biabat. I am also an innovation coach at the American International School of Guangzhou with Tanya, and this is my 20-something year in education. In the States, I taught middle school, high school, humanities, language arts, social studies, EAL, also some instructional coaching. This is my 8th year overseas, and I have taught middle school humanities, and then this is my 6th year as a tech integration, innovation coach here.
Awesome. So we have a wealth of experience in this room, not just specifically in coaching, but in lots of different areas of education, which is really exciting. And I know that Diana and Tanya are in the same school, so you might have some similar answers to some of these questions. But just to kind of start us off, because you're all in different schools, with the exception of Diana and Tanya, what is your role as a coach in your school? What does it look like? What does it mean to you? Kind of describe a little bit about your role in your school. And I will get us to start with Diana just because I see you on my screen right now.
Okay. This is my first year at American International School of Guangzhou. And Tanya and I do work at the same school, but I'm at the secondary and she's at the elementary. So those two different divisions have different needs, and we do some of the similar things. We actually consult back with each other as well. And so my role, I'm assigned to high school, but I'm working with middle school and high school teachers and students, providing support using technology in the classroom, getting out resources, leading PD, and just we could make a whole list of course, for all of us, all the different roles that we play.
Great. And let's go with Jeff.
Yep. Okay. So my role is across the entire school. So we're a school. We've got about 450 students. So I work with all the teachers, the parents, and the students across the school from the early years. So the 2 and 3-year-old students, teachers, up to the DP program. So basically, my role is as a technology coach. I also do a little bit of teaching. I'm teaching grade 6 maths this year. And I also sort of manage the IT team. So it's a big job. It's across the entire school. What does my day look like? What does my coaching look like? It's a lot of one-to-one meetings with teachers or meeting with planning teams. I seem to do a lot of what they call, I suppose, the light coaching side of things. But like Diana said, I do a lot of PD sessions. I run after-school programs for coaches. I run weekend, Google educator training to get them up. So it's a bit of everything. And for me, my role is all about supporting the teachers. Sort of one aspect of it is making their life easier and helping them in the classroom, but also that gentle prodding and just getting them to think about different ways that they can use technology, how they can improve the use of technology, or sometimes even forget about technology because you don't need to use it. There's a better way to do that without using the tech.
So true. I've got questions. I've got lots of questions already, but I'm going to save them while we still do some more introductions. And let's talk to Lisa.
So I'm going to talk about my previous school. So I was in Kuwait for 6 years, and when I was hired, we were tech coaches, and it was the first time that any sort of technology coaches in the school. And really, in those 6 years, we went to a team of instructional coaches. We had some specialties, but we really tried to move that culture of coaching into the school versus just these little silos of coaching happening. And if you watch the Coach Better podcast with Christina Botville, she was my director of curriculum, and so she can speak a lot more to that. But we worked pre-K through grade 12, and my focus was tech integration, but we also really tried to just better student learning, and help teachers make the learning in their classroom even better. So, yeah.
Okay. And Tanya.
So my position is really no different than the other ones. I'd say I do a lot of the same stuff, and no day looks the same. But one of my big goals is to build capacity in teachers. I really want to make them comfortable using whatever technology applies to the learning in the classroom, and then that will trickle down to the kids and the experiences. So yeah, that's just my main goal. And however I get there, if it's PDs one-on-one, if it's planning and team meetings, or if it's preparing even a little video for teachers so that they can learn in their own time, whatever it takes. So it's exciting.
That is very exciting. So, everyone talked a little bit about kind of what that relationship is with teachers and building those connections. And I like how Jeff said it's kind of going from making life easier to sometimes that gentle prodding to kind of push them along. I'm curious to know, because you have different scopes, like Tanya and Diana are focused on either lower school or upper school. Lisa, you were a pre-K to 12 coach. Mm-hmm. Jeff, you are also sort of a K-12 coach. With your different ranges of specialty or focus, what benefits or challenges come out of being either looking only at the high school or looking K-12, for example?
My favorite thing about being K-12 was that I got to see the entire picture of the school. I was a high school teacher before I moved into the coaching role, and it was such a huge learning experience over those 6 years to go from, my little classroom, my little pod that was just me and my students, to that huge big picture view. And I really appreciated being able to work with teachers and admin and other coaches from all levels to look at what we can do for learning in the entire school.
I think that's a really good point for anyone moving into a coaching role at all, because a lot of times you move into a coaching role, obviously from a classroom position, and there's very few classroom positions that have like a K-12 scope. There's even not a ton of classroom positions that would have like a whole secondary scope. I mean, obviously there are some. So that idea of like really getting a bigger picture idea of what's going on at the school is something that is often new to anyone moving into a coaching role.
Yeah, I have to. For me, oh, sorry, go ahead. You go.
Okay, so thanks. Sorry. Yeah, I think I'd have to agree completely. Working across the entire school, you just get such a variety. Like, you can be working with teachers who are working with little kids who are only using iPads, or you can be going up to the high school. And you can actually bring those skills, or get the teachers, which is even better, get those skills from secondary to elementary and vice versa. And, even just if I could take a teacher's class so they could go down and watch the kindergarten teacher and see how they're using play, there's a lot of value in that. So I think that's that whole school aspect, even though it can be tough in other ways, there's a lot of value in that across the school and variety.
And I think your point, Jeff, about connecting teachers and letting them see what's going on in other parts of the school, that's something that really someone with that whole school perspective can do. And I can't remember, Clint, if you were in this meeting. I don't think you were, because it was before you got to YS, but in one of our tech pilots meeting, which was a small group of teachers who were like super keen and got a little bit of extra release time to learn about technology. They were K-12, that group of teachers. And I remember after the very first meeting, several people came up to me and were like, I am so glad, I teach IB economics. And it was so great to hear from a grade 3 classroom teacher today and get an understanding that those grade 3 kids are actually doing more than what I asked my grade 12 to do. And then somebody else was talking about hearing what they're doing in PE gives me such a better understanding of what I can expect them to then be able to do in art. And like just that cross school pollination is it's a really valuable part of the coaching role that I don't think we've actually talked about in any of the Coach Better podcasts yet.
Yeah, I was just thinking as you both were talking about that, how often I've thought about how cool it would be if a DP or if one of the middle school teachers could come down, or some of the students could come down and see how the same tools they're using are being used in elementary, and really kind of potentially get schooled by some kids who are a little bit younger on how to use some programs, which would be kind of neat. So, and then, or maybe just see how they're doing things the same and how that transfers. So I think that'd be really fun. Diana, let's do it.
And I think for Tanya and I, it's actually, our schools are physically apart from each other. So it's important that we're staying in contact and chatting about what's happening at the elementary, and hey, I'm going to try this out in the middle school. And so to get that, but we have to make an effort as we're not physically on the same campus. It's about a 45-minute drive. It can be about a 45-minute drive between the campuses. So that's our challenge, is that we're physically not near each other. If we were, I know that we would be doing even more K-12, pre-K-12.
So you'd have to be very deliberate then, and about it, and set things up. It's not just going to happen, is it, automatically? Yeah.
So just to change the subject here a little bit, one of our roles too, and all of you identified this too, is to help teachers learn and grow. But how do you, as coaches, learn and grow? What is your secret to that success that you could share?
Well, for me, it's Twitter. Twitter is one of my favorite places to go, and I know that everyone says that, but it's for a reason, because it's awesome and you can find people to follow and people to share with. And also podcasts. I walk to school most mornings when it's nice, and I'll listen to one every morning pretty much. So I find I learn a lot in those moments when I probably wouldn't learn otherwise. So
cool. For me, it's really about those personal connections. So I mean, probably the biggest learning experience I had this year was I've just been to Learning 2 in Nanjing. And that was, for me, that was a really positive experience, because we actually got time as presenters beforehand to plan together what we were going to be doing. And we got like 2 days of working on it. I can see Tanya smiling away here because she probably agrees with me. But, I've never had that. I've presented at so many conferences where I've just shown up, presented, go home. Maybe a week later, you might get a bit of feedback. This was very deliberate. We got to work together. We got to workshop things and throw ideas around. then straight after the event, we got our feedback straight away, and we sat around in a circle and we talked about things. And for me, that was just such a positive, learning experience. And like whenever we do something at school where teachers are running other workshops, that's the sort of thing I want to do, is sort of meet with them beforehand and say, let's throw our ideas around. Because sometimes you also don't get to go and see other people's presentations if you're presenting at the same time. Let's throw our ideas around, workshop it together, and then debrief together at the end. So things like that, and my Google Innovator course last year, anything where I can be together with people or even a teach me, that's where I learn so much. I mean, this talking and reflecting on what we do is helping me, ridiculously.
And Jeff, what you're talking about is that kind of classic coaching cycle of like pre-observation almost, right? And then you go and you do the performance, whether it's the workshop or the class, and then coming back and debriefing and having that, just kind of closing the loop on that conversation, which then sparks new ideas or new thoughts, and then it's this continuous cycle of improvement. And I think a lot of times, sometimes in school, we get so busy that we forget that we do need to come back and we have those conversations afterwards and help people push their own thinking.
And you raise a really good point, Jeff, that in school, when we have limited people who are leading professional development, I know as a coach, I will often lean on the same, let's say 10 to 12 people. And unless you prioritize and focus on them getting PD2, they're always giving it, just like coaches, but there's never a provided time for them to learn too. So keeping that model in mind of making sure that the people who are really frequently presenting get that opportunity to learn from each other, I think that would be so appreciated.
Yeah.
I think it's just taking advantage of like social media and face-to-face, any kind of conferences I go to. More and more I'm connecting with other coaches through different experiences, and then we run into each other or we meet up on purpose at conferences and having those conversations. And for me, I feel really fortunate. I'm also working with coaches through Eduro. I've been facilitating some courses in the Coach Microcredential. And just like with teaching, when you teach, you learn. And when I work with these other educators who are already coaches or interested in coaching, it just builds up. I get more ideas, or I get to share an experience and get feedback from them. So really taking advantage of any opportunities you can to interact with others.
I would say like yes to all of those things. And then I did some more formal things as well. And I'm sure other people have as well. But we actually brought in at our school, we did a cohort at our school of the coaching from theory into practice that Eduro does. And that was really meaningful to have the coaches at our school. And we actually also included the department heads. So we all did that together. So that was a really nice formal way that the school sponsored for me. And then I also went out and found some of my own. So I did cognitive coaching. And then I also, Christina Babel again, she led coaching at our school. So the national NSRF. So I'm now I'm going to lose the word. What is it called?
Certified?
Yes, but oh my gosh, I'll remember it later, but like leading protocols and facilitating and those things. So that was really beneficial for me as well, to then be able to use those both in the classroom, but then also with my peers as well, my colleagues.
So sorry, I'm going to jump in just for a second and go take it the next direction. I just did one of the things that we're adding to our repertoire of coaching resources here at Eduro that will already be going on for many months by the time this podcast is released, but we're doing something called 5 Minute Fridays, and we're going to have a coaching tip every Friday that's under 5 minutes. And the one that I just did was about how to be a better learning coach, and I feel like I nailed it because everything you guys just said was in that video. So thank you for that. You're making me feel real good right now. All right, sorry, Clint, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think Lisa kind of preempted our next question about, we talked about like our own learning in terms of learning the tools and learning what other schools are doing. But I think there's also a real art and science to coaching itself and what we can do to become better coaches beyond just becoming better resource providers. And I'm wondering if you guys have any tips or any suggestions or any resources that you would want to highlight that you felt has made you a better coach in dealing with your peers, in facilitation, in leading meetings, in helping to have, sometimes you need to have that difficult conversation with the teacher, or you need to talk about some really heavy things, but you need to do it in a very empathetic way. What advice or what resources have helped you improve in those skills?
Well, I actually was just at a session led by Diana that was all about coaching and the questions that you can ask, and a lot of cognitive coaching questions. And it was really informative. And she will probably say this, but I'm going to say it for her. She's got this amazing website full of resources for articles and all this sorts of stuff. So she's a great resource. And I think one of the things that I really took away from it, and it's something you know, but you really have to think about a lot, is to remind yourself just to listen first and always continue to keep that. And because a lot of times, you know, you want to help so much that you might stop listening, and you might not get to the bottom of what was the real issue or the real, I guess, problem to solve. So that would be my biggest advice to anyone starting to coach.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think that listening and that empathy is just so important. I mean, and you know, being available. And sometimes you're not going to have the answers, and you don't have to have the answers every time. But if people trust you, that's when you get that in. If you've got to build that trust, and it takes time. And you know, so I think spending time and effort and just being available whenever you can to people and building that trust is the first thing that I would, you know, ever do as a coach. Or even if I was starting at a new school, I wouldn't go in there, want to change anything for at least 3 months or 6 months. I would just sit there and soak in the culture of the school and find out what's happening. And then you can sort of start that gentle prodding and moving forward if need be. And you learn a lot more, you know. You jump in, that's when you make mistakes. If you sit and listen, you're going to make a lot less mistakes.
So I'm going to jump in because I am very fortunate to be able to be creating like lots of online resources for coaches. And Clint, when you were talking about the discrete skills that it takes to be a successful learning coach, and as coaches, when we recognize that maybe we have an area we need to grow in, and Diana mentioned before Clint said that, how powerful it's been for her to be part of the Eduro, the Coach Microcredential, and facilitating other courses from Eduro that she's learning by working with other new coaches. Like, that is so huge for me. Just designing these courses based on things I already know from being a coach for 20 years in international schools, but then actually like reading books on my bookshelf behind me here, you know, and seeking out resources and actually finding the answers to questions that coaches are asking me has been such a great learning opportunity that is slightly more formal than like our conversation here now, which is also an amazing opportunity for professional growth for me as well. But the idea of looking at coaching as a somewhat formal and structured role in schools is something that when we are in a technology coaching position, we don't often do, because in most schools, technology coaching is very informal. There's very little structure or framework for it. It's just kind of like, who knows how to do the tools? Okay, now you can be a coach, or at least that's been my experience in schools, because there isn't really a structure for coaching, particularly for technology coaching. So having that opportunity to look at what does instructional coaching look like in much more formalized settings has been really valuable for me and my own professional growth, and how to help new coaches understand how to do their jobs really successfully instead of just kind of being thrown into the deep end and having to figure it out, which was my personal experience as a coach.
And I would say some of the resources, and thanks Tanya for the shout out on that, some of the main resources that I have, that I share out, really come from instructional coaches like Jim Knight and Elena Aguilera and Joe and Killian, who are really well known for just instructional coaching in general, and cognitive coaching, and other resources that are for, you know, kind of those instructional coaching that, like you said, like we have a lot of teachers who come out of the classroom into a coaching position, and in some cases they're just helping people learn the tech, but there's been a lot of evolution, like Lissa talked about at her school, of getting, you know, you have the tech integration, but then you get to a point where it really needs to be about the learning in general and making that shift. And I think there hasn't been. That's why we've all connected in different ways and through different means to find that support and that's not that's not always given to us when we go into those roles.
I remembered Critical Friends Group Coach, and we used last year, one of my biggest professional growth experiences was we got money every year. I didn't have the time or a conference that was easy for me to go to. So I actually used my money and bought a ton of coaching books and then added those to our professional library. And so then the coaching team, we every couple of weeks, we were all like reading a different book because I knew I was leaving and I didn't want to leave all these awesome resources. I wanted to learn from them. So we each read a different book and we would meet and work through a protocol to share with each other about what we were reading and then ultimately how that would impact our work at our school. And that was an amazing, amazing professional learning opportunity for me.
And I think when you start looking at coaching, especially, again, Kim and I both have a background in educational technology, right? So that tends to be where we gravitate towards. But when you start looking at a larger vision of what coaching is and start realizing you can start connecting with your literacy coach or your math coach, right? Or you could looking at your learning support specialists as coaches in the classroom if they're doing a lot of co-teaching in that classroom. Or I've come to realize a lot of the conversations that we have with librarians, I mean, a lot of the work that they're doing is really coaching related as well. And when you start looking at that larger team of people who are coaching at your school or who have coaching roles at your school, you realize there's a lot of us out there and we can be supporting each other if we start thinking about ourselves under like one big umbrella. And I think that's what's really interesting for me in this work that Kim and I are doing in talking to a whole bunch of people in a whole bunch of different roles.
Yeah, Clint, I think your point always comes, I always end up saying something about working at ISB and being in the same room as the literacy coach, the science coach, and the math coach. And that was like the beginning of my connection to / realization, oh, there are other coaches out there. There is research about coaching out there. This is something I can learn from. Not everybody's starting from scratch. So you called it that umbrella model or umbrella structure. I don't know exactly what you said. We said umbrella. And I think that resonates really, really strongly for me because there is a need for educational technology coaches to build everything from scratch. There's lots of existing stuff that we can work from there. So kind of switching gears a little bit, as coaches, I think all of us are passionate about our own learning. We just talked about all the different ways that we learn. And perhaps we are our own worst critics and we may focus in on the things that we struggle with more than areas where we are successful. So I'm curious, in your perspectives, in your current roles, what is challenging for you? What's your area for growth? Like, what do you want to work on as a coach?
I suppose for me, the latest thing I'm really getting into is using data and collecting and using data. Like for the last 3 years, I've collected data on a Google form that goes to a Google spreadsheet, and I make these nice graphs about what I do every day and, you know, which section of the school I work with and where I work with. And I just don't feel as though I've used that very efficiently or have used it, you know, very effectively. So even in my teaching, I'm like teaching a bit of maths this year. And so I'm collecting data from the students, you know, throughout the lesson, and then looking at how can I use that data and making my nice graphs and, you know, splitting it up and finding. So just exploring and finding ways that I can collect and use data is a big passion of mine at the moment.
I'm going to throw a plug in right now for the episode that Clint and I recorded with Will Kirkwood in Zurich. It's coming out, I think, in January, early January, I think. And he talked all about the data that he collects at his school and how he uses it. And it was very good. So keep your eyes peeled or your ears open for that episode because I think you'll really enjoy that.
I can't wait for that one. Yeah.
I actually just started collecting data on my coaching as well, and it's really informal. Like I made a Microsoft form and I filled out I basically made 3 questions for myself that I can fill out anytime I help anyone, and it's listing all of the teachers at the school. And then the second question is the kind of help they received, and the third is the amount of time spent. So I just kind of fill it out informally on my phone as I meet with people or check in or anything like that. And then I take a look every so often and it tells me who maybe has been getting a lot of the time, or who maybe hasn't been getting so much, or the kinds of things I spend my time doing. And that's been really helpful in helping me address things that maybe need to be addressed more, or just shows me, I guess, it's, as a coach, you spend your time doing so many things. So when you can actually see what that looks like, it's really useful. I'm
curious, Tanya, you said the kind of help they receive. Just what sort of categories do you have when you're tagging that? Just quickly.
Well, I have like kickoff meetings for unit of inquiry, things like a full hour PD, in-class modeling, or doing a co-teaching situation. Sometimes I just have a check-in one. So if I'm just checking in with them for 5 minutes to see how they're doing, troubleshooting apps or teaching how to use programs. So those are some of the different ones.
And I love those categories because it starts to help you define what your role is, or help other people realize all of the different things that you're doing. And it also makes you sometimes go, oh, I'm doing a lot of this. I don't even have a category for that. Like, where do I categorize that? And you start to build that in as well.
Yeah, it's true. You do. It's really eye-opening, actually. I spend a lot of time troubleshooting apps. Yeah.
For me, when I was in Kuwait, while the K-12 was my favorite thing, it was also a huge struggle because we had a divisional structure. And so we weren't part of a division, and creating those relationships, and that was difficult, and there was no expectation that people work with us either. So it could be a very lonely job. And now in my new role as an EAL teacher, I'm finding my biggest area for growth is now putting into practice all of the things that I was coaching people before. And luckily, I have some really awesome colleagues at ISB, and I go to Clint and other people as well a lot, because I wanna now be the coachee and find those coaches who can help me harness what we have there to really best impact that student learning.
For me, I'm new to the school, so I always just feel it's like a continual work in progress, all the different things that I can be working on. So for me, it's right now, it's making adjustment, being in a new school. The past 5 years I was working at elementary as an innovation technology coach, and now I'm back at secondary, which I have a lot of teaching experience at. So it's really about building the relationships and then figuring out, where are teachers at, where can we go, where are some places that I can do a little prodding in a way, kind of like, hey, let's go that. So I'm really, for me, my area of growth is just really taking my experience, but then also applying it to a new situation, a new school. A lot of people who don't know me, I mean, I walk in and you can have all the experience in the world, but you still have to kind of start fresh and build credibility, build the relationships, figure out how things work. Fortunately, our office is right next to the Director of Curriculum and Learning, and so we're communicating a lot with that, which is great, and in building that. So I'm kind of in a rebuilding phase with the role that I'm in, but it's great too. Every day is different, and I'm seeing progress. I'm getting in classrooms. Teachers are I see, but it does take time, and I do have to remind myself of that. Of I need to also take a step back, and I'm almost one semester in, but made progress. But then looking forward to the next semester and where can I go from there.
Awesome.
Another challenge. Oh, yep, sorry. I'm hopeless at documenting and writing policies and things, and being a one-man show in a school, as from the tech coaching side of things. That's something I need to work on, is my documenting of systems, because we build so many and make so many things, but we need to have a record of them. If I do, something happens to me, or get run over by a bus or whatever it's going to be. But also just the planning side of things. Like we're trying to build a scope and sequence for digital literacy, and it's been something I've been thinking about and trying to do for 3 or 4 years. But I really need to put my head down and sort of.
Did we all lose Jeff?
Yes.
I did.
Okay, I'm going to jump in. I'm sure what he's saying is going to come back at some point, but I'm going to jump in now. I think actually his point about documentation and writing policies is a really good point, and I'm kind of glad he got frozen because I wanted to talk about it, because that's another thing that when you come out of the classroom and you move into a coaching role, that is not something most teachers have any experience with. So like figuring out how to plan a scope and sequence for digital citizenship, for example, as Jeff, you were talking about when you froze for a second there, so I just took right over. That's something that coaches do often for the very first time. They've never been part of anything like that. But when they're doing it for the first time, they're the one responsible for it because no one else knows how to do it either. So it's such a good point to talk about the documentation and writing the policies. That's a whole additional side of the role that often you don't even realize until you're into it.
So part of the reason why we've got all of you guys together is you guys have sort of a second job that you do along with some other people who are part of that group, which is the hashtag #ISEdChat that you guys do. I think, is it on a monthly basis? You guys throw that out there. And we want to just talk to you guys a little bit about how all of that came about. So how did you guys come up with this idea to form ISEdChat?
So it's the hashtag's isedcoach.
isedcoach, sorry.
But it is a chat. I was actually trying to think about who started the tweet. I can't remember.
I think it was Lisa.
Was it Lisa? Okay.
I think they had the hashtag from a conference.
Yeah. So Lisa, you might want to start speaking then.
No, I've been trying to like rack my brain. I'm like, how did we do this? Like,
I think Nikki had a bit to do with it. I think Nikki was the one. She started wanting to. Her and Tim Bray was sort of, started throwing some ideas around, and I got suckered in, and then other people did, and some people said, "Oh, I'd be keen to be interested in that." It's probably about a year and a half ago, and then and then I think Lisa already had the hashtag from a Learning 2 cohort, and we tapped into that hashtag that was already being used for coaches sort of talking to each other and chatting. That's
I have a little bit of the prehistory.
Go Diana.
Okay. I actually looked back at some things to make sure I had the timing right. This came out of a conversation I had with some coaches back in 2015. I was co-facilitating coaching from theory to practice for Eduro learning with Kim. And we had some participants who, Thomas Hammerlin and Victor Boulanger, who were at a school in Taiwan. And so just out of luck and just some coordination, I was going to be in Taiwan in Kaohsiung. I believe they were in the southern Taiwan. I was going to be there. And so I said, hey, I'm going to be here. Can I come and visit the school? And they like, that's great. Let's have come and visit. Thomas was like the first and or only tech coach at the school. And so Victor thought this would be a great idea just to have a chat. And it was great. I visited the school. We had great conversations. And we talked about how do we keep this going. And I was going to Learning 2 in Manila that following weekend. And so some of us started talking about it, and then we started testing out some possible hashtags. We was like, let's use Twitter. We can keep connected on Twitter. And then we started letting people know and gaining some traction with that. And I think there were we attempted one or two Twitter chats at the time. And then people moved, things just I think we still use the hashtag as that. And it didn't go dormant, but it just there wasn't as much, drive behind it. And then I think about a year and a half ago, I think I happened to see a tweet, somebody asking about what's this hashtag people are using. I was like, oh, we use the ISED coach. And then you all took over, and now it's doing amazing. So that's a little the prehistory of that.
Awesome.
We got into a private chat, I think, a bunch of us. Yeah.
Yeah.
We got into a private chat, and then things blew up. Yeah.
Yeah, I looked back. Our very first formal chat where we all started together was March 2017. So that's pretty fun. That's a long time.
Yeah, so that's been about a year and a half. A little bit over a year and a half now, so probably 18, 20 months now. And you guys kind of do that on rotating facilitation, right? But how does facilitating that chat, what do you get out of that? How does that facilitate your own learning? How has that helped you maybe to grow your connections or to kind of grow your own brains?
I think it goes back to a bit of what Kim was saying before, but by actually doing these things, you learn by doing, as opposed to just sort of being the expert, by being a student again and sort of having to think types of questions that we want to ask, and then thinking, well, how would I ask that? And then the online collaboration for me, being the only tech coach in my school, well, there might be other coaches, for me to be able to connect with other people, via Twitter, even before the chat, we have shared documents that we're all sort of putting comments in, and we're doing it, we've got back channels that we're chatting about this, and, oh, that's a great question. Have you thought about this? For me, that's like, wow, I could never have the opportunity sitting in my office on my own. So that bringing us together as a community is so valuable.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing about the questions, just creating those questions and the process of that. And then it gets you really to be more thoughtful about your own practice. So, and it's really fun as well to think about things in different ways that you may not have even thought about. So.
You guys are just making me think about the work that I'm doing for Eduro Learning and building these online courses and running the Coach Microcredential, and this, just like you said, Jeff, by teaching you learn and being able to express an idea to someone in 140 characters, or even to use a screenshot or a picture of something to be able to express an idea. Like, I think that is a really powerful opportunity for learning. And when you start thinking about how you can help others, I know that sounds like so cheesy, but how you can help others, it's such a great opportunity to, like Tanya is saying, look at things from so many different perspectives, because I say this all the time, but you're wrapped up in your own little world. And when you try to open things up to a much broader audience, like you would on Twitter, it's not even a small audience like us, where we're all pretty much coming from the same perspective. It's much broader than that. And to be able to explain yourself and support a point of view in that larger audience just brings a whole new way of thinking about things, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it still holds true. Kind of the reason that we looked at finding and creating a hashtag that we could stay connected with is we felt that there was kind of a void in finding support as teacher, particularly as so many coaches are the only coach in their school. And so making those connections and I felt, and now there's other things through the conference, through Eduro Learning, through other things that we can make connections and build our profession. But I think this is one of those things that does that. It provides a platform for a lot of coaches who don't have access to things that we do, or they're the only coach at their school, or there's a certain thing they're dealing with, and so they can reach out. They have now, built the PLN as well. I'm not involved so much in planning the Twitter chats, but just to see how all the engagement that they've been able to get through the Twitter chats and just the hashtag itself. It's continually, people are continually posting to it, not just during the monthly chat. So it's really become, and people have spread the word. And I was just looking on there today, all the different people that have contributed to it. I looked at some analytics, and in the last 7 days, there have been over 300 tweets. I mean, it's a very active hashtag. The monthly chats really also provide a focus for people and a place for people to connect and build their understanding and learning.
And I'll say, like, I was a lurker on the chat or on the hashtag for a while. And I kind of felt like, I don't really want to jump in, like that's their thing. And but I love it as a resource. There are so many good resources. If I have a question or if I'm looking for people's perspectives, there are always some hashtags that I will use to try and gain traction. And I, as head coach, I know you're always going to get great responses, and people are down to have a conversation about things. Coach Better, learning to, like, there's so many out there that are so good. But I was hesitant for a while. If you're listening to this podcast, don't be hesitant. Jump right in. Be like, hey, I've got a question for you, because it is a great community of people online.
We want to see you there next month, Clint. Okay.
I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best.
Do it the 10th of December.
And I also think all of this is a reminder at how valuable what one might consider as like free and easy PD can actually be. I know all of us have said it in different ways over the course of this call and many times in our professional careers, but you know, you're using tools that are free to connect with each other in your back channel chats and your Google Docs, and then you're using another free tool, which is Twitter, to connect with a wider audience. And like, I mean, a lot of times I think some of those tools can be quickly dismissed as something that's really not worth your time or energy. And hearing you guys talk about the power of connecting through those free and easy tools, it's like really inspiring, because anybody can do what you're doing, but you have to put in the effort to make it what it is. And that's what you guys have done. So well done, team.
And
I think by us putting in the effort, it's benefited us too.
Absolutely.
Like, not like, I mean, I think as a coach, you're constantly giving, and that's sort of part of the role, is that your job is to support other people. But by us putting in, as you keep saying, that putting in a bit of effort ourselves, it helps us and makes us think more.
And I really appreciate,
we get out more than we put in.
Yeah. I really appreciate kind of the open, public, and inclusive nature of the tools that you're using, and of how you guys are using it, and of your group in general. I think that's very, very commendable, and it's great for all teachers and all coaches and all administrators and anybody who is like looking to get better at what they do. So thank you.
And thank you guys so much for your time today. That was a great conversation. There are lots of gems in here for coaches at all different levels to kind of take back and use in their own coaching context. So thank you so much for your time this afternoon. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you'll know when we release a new video each week. Here at Eduro Learning, we want to help you coach better. To get you started, we've got some great resources to share with you right now. The first is a free digital download called 5 Strategies for Your Coaching Toolkit, and it's linked in the description box below. Plus, you can join our Facebook group, Coach Better, to connect with other instructional coaches around the world. The link is also in the description box below. If you're looking for even more learning, we are just about to start our next cohort of the Coach Microcredential. This academic year-long mentorship program includes 26 weeks of course content, a supportive network of like-minded participants who are coaches, and your own private mentor. Cohort 3 starts on April 28, 2019, and registration opens on March 4th. If you are ready to sign up right away, we have some great early bird bonus offers starting on January 15th, and spaces are limited, so please check it out. Are you ready to coach better? Get a preview to what you'll learn and see what past participants have to say at edurolearning.com/coach. And finally, if you haven't caught it yet, our weekly Coach Better Slow Chat on Twitter will help you build your professional learning network, and it's facilitated by 3 of our awesome The Coach participants, so you can see the types of coaches that you'll be learning with. Check out the link in the description box below. We hope that all of these resources are useful for you, and we'd love to hear what you think about them. If you have questions about coaching or guests you'd like to see featured, please leave us a comment and we will do our best to make it happen. See you next time.